Welcome to the Sky Commander Flight Brief. It's your mission-ready podcast for drone pilot training and aerial insights across Canada.
From Transport Canada rules to real-world drone ops, we break it down, take you higher, and help you earn your wings. Because here at skycommander.ca, we don't just fly.
It hints there's more to it. It's a masterclass, a deeper level, maybe a philosophy or a community focus, perhaps.
It's definitely intriguing, sets them apart from just, a basic tips show. Skycommander.ca is the obvious next step. Precisely. If you're thinking about flying a drone in Canada, boom, this content is aimed right at you.
Powered by skycommander.ca.
The elite podcast for Canada's drone pilot. Okay, let's get started. Have you ever found yourself pushing through a long day, completely drained, but telling yourself, I just need to finish this one last thing? Maybe it was for a looming deadline, or maybe you just didn't want to let a client down. That seemingly innocent act, that personal push, can actually have profound, even dangerous consequences, especially in high-stakes environments. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're embarking on what I found to be a truly eye-opening journey into a topic that touches everyone, whether you're meticulously planning an advanced drone mission or simply navigating the daily pressures of your workday. Fatigue and stress. We've meticulously combed through a stack of incredible sources that go far beyond the simplistic advice of just don't fly tired. We're going to unpack the cutting-edge science, trace the compelling history, and even reveal some genuinely surprising facts that make this an incredibly engaging deep dive. Our mission today is clear: to cut through the noise, to give you those aha moments, and to leave you feeling truly well-informed about something that could quite literally save lives, protect valuable assets, and will certainly safeguard your career.
And what's truly fascinating here, I think, is how something as seemingly personal, almost subjective, as feeling tired transforms into a critical safety and stringent legal consideration in the world of professional operations. We're going to systematically explore how drone regulations have really evolved to recognize this, the practical tools pilots rigorously employ to manage these invisible risks, and some truly unexpected ways fatigue and stress impact our performance. Often, even when we're completely unaware of it, it's about moving beyond simply feeling tired to understanding the profound, measurable, and frankly, highly consequential impact on human performance in the cockpit, or, in our case, at the drone controls.
Okay, let's unpack this then. When we talk about fatigue in the highly precise world of drone operations, what exactly do we mean? Because it's clearly more nuanced than just feeling a bit sleepy after maybe staying up too late, right? When you're piloting something as complex as a remotely piloted aircraft system, an RPAS, tired, takes on this entirely new level of critical importance. It's not just about comfort, it's fundamentally about control and safety.
Precisely. And Transport Canada, which is Canada's national air authority, they provide a very clear and, I think, quite comprehensive definition. They define fatigue as a state of reduced mental or physical performance capability resulting from sleep loss, extended wakefulness, circadian phase disruption, or workload, mental and or physical, that impairs a pilot's alertness and ability to safely operate in RPAS. So it's not merely about how much sleep you got last night. It actually encompasses the sheer duration you've been awake, how well your internal body clock, your circadian rhythm is aligned with your activities, and even the mental and physical demands your tasks placed on you. It's really a holistic assessment of your readiness to operate safely.
Right. So in simpler terms, it's when you're just too exhausted, whether that's mentally or physically, to consistently make sharp, accurate decisions. And it's incredibly sneaky, isn't it? Often building up insidiously over time. You might not even recognize the full extent of its detrimental impact until you're deep into a critical task, and, by then, it could be too late. It sort of silently erodes your ability to react swiftly, or to recall crucial details, or even to efficiently process new incoming information from your drone's telemetry, or maybe what your visual observer is telling you.
Exactly. It's an invisible yet persistent erosion of your core operational capability. And that naturally brings us to its equally impactful and closely related cousin,
which would be stress. And often people mistakenly believe that stress sharpens them, right? Gives them that edge in performance. And while, a burst of acute stress like adrenaline can certainly focus the mind for a very brief period, that's not always the case here, especially not in a sustained operational context. There's definitely a critical point where that edge flips and becomes a real hindrance.
You're absolutely right. Stress is fundamentally the body's physiological and psychological response to demands placed upon it. Now, acute stress is typically short-term, a quick reaction to an immediate threat, maybe a sudden unexpected gust of wind that tosses your drone, or perhaps a critical system error message flashing on your controller. That kind of stress can, indeed, briefly heighten your senses and focus your attention. However, it's chronic stress that's the real concern in prolonged operations. Chronic stress builds up insidiously over time. It stems from persistent pressures, like demanding clients, tight deadlines, or even unresolved personal issues bleeding over. This type of stress can profoundly impair judgment, coordination, and decision-making. Think of it not as a brief burst of energy, but more like a constant low-level hum of anxiety that eventually wears down your cognitive functions. It can manifest as that persistent brain fog, disrupt your sleep patterns, even if you technically have enough downtime, and lead to degraded judgment, mimicking many of the effects of sleep deprivation, even if you've actually had a full night's rest.
Okay, so it's your brain and body reacting to sustained pressure. A little bit can certainly help in very short bursts, like you said, but too much for too long will undoubtedly burn you out. It'll fundamentally mess with your ability to operate that drone safely, making you significantly more prone to errors and, frankly, poor choices. Which brings us to a really fundamental question. How did we, as an industry, arrive at this point? When did being tired or being stressed transition from being just a personal problem to a formal, legal, and critical operational one for drone pilots?
Well, it's a journey that really reflects the maturation of the drone industry itself, doesn't it? Moving from, a novel technology to a highly regulated and professionalized field. Before 2019, it truly was the Wild West era for remotely piloted aircraft systems regarding human factors.
The Wild West, huh?
Yeah.
So maybe paint a picture for our listeners. What did that actually look like on the ground? Was it really just a free-for-all?
In many ways, yes. Prior to Transport Canada introducing CARS Part 9, that's the Canadian Aviation Regulations, the specific section governing drone ops in 2019, drone operations were largely unregulated regarding human factors, or they just sort of loosely fell under the general umbrella of manned aviation rules, often without specific RPAS context. There was no explicit RPA-specific language directly addressing fatigue or stress. So as a result, fitness-to-fly decisions were almost entirely self-regulated. Pilots were flying based on what they felt was best on any given day, with no standardized or legally binding expectations. Imagine operating a complex piece of machinery, potentially overpopulated areas or critical infrastructure, with absolutely no official guidance or legal framework dictating your own mental and physical state. That's pretty much what it was like. Now, there were certainly passionate professional operators out there, but there are also many who simply operated without any formal consideration for these critical human factors.
Wow. That's a pretty glaring blind spot when you consider the potential risks involved. So what specifically changed when 2019 rolled around? What was the big shift?
Well, 2019 marked a truly monumental shift. Transport Canada introduced CARS Part 9s, officially designated as SOR 2019-11, which provided the first comprehensive regulatory framework specifically for drone operations in Canada. And the absolute game changer within this was Section 901.27, explicitly titled Fitness of Crew Members. This section unequivocally states, no pilot shall operate an RPAS if they are fatigued or otherwise impaired.
Mm-hmm.
The singular edition instantly elevated human factors from, a mere suggestion or maybe a best practice to a formal, non-negotiable legal obligation. Operators became directly accountable. Fatigue was no longer just a risky personal issue. It became a clear instance of non-compliance, punishable by law.
Okay, so it went from a personal, should I fly, to an absolute legal, I must not fly if impaired. That's a massive leap forward in professionalization for sure. And then it evolved even further, didn't it? Because the industry is constantly learning, adapting.
Absolutely. The evolution continued with the 2023-2024 updates to TP 15263. That's the official knowledge requirements for RPS pilots document, the very guide that defines what pilots need to know. These updates place an even stronger, more granular emphasis on human factors. Training programs began to shift from a sort of superficial, don't fly tired directive to a much deeper, understand the underlying science behind fatigue and stress. This included mandatory elements like the MCAV checklist, which we'll get into, a detailed exploration of the various types of fatigue, acute, cumulative, and circadian comprehensive stress management strategies, and crucially, the paramount importance of effective crew performance and clear communication. It was all about cultivating a more informed, proactive, and ultimately safer pilot community.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. You genuinely can't manage something effectively unless you truly understand its subtle nuances and the scientific underpinnings. And looking ahead, what's currently on the horizon for fatigue and stress regulations, specifically as we approach 2025 and beyond, what can pilots expect?
Well, the anticipated amendments for 2025, specifically under SR 2025-70 and further refinements to TP 15263. They're designed to robustly align RPAS operations with the stringent safety management systems, or SMS, that have long been standard in manned aviation. This means we'll likely see a much stronger emphasis on formalized fatigue risk management systems, or FRM, and a far greater accountability for crew-wide fitness, not just the individual pilot at the controls. This translates into a clear expectation of routine, documented self-assessment and pre-flight declarations for all crew members. Fatigue is really moving beyond a simple yes-no checklist. It's becoming an integral part of proactive risk forecasting and comprehensive mission planning, integrated right into your standard operating procedures. And this raises an important question for all professional operators. What does this fundamental shift truly mean for the day-to-day future of drone operations?
Indeed, it sounds like a significant leap, moving from relying on personal judgment to adopting a highly structured, almost data-driven risk framework. So what does that actually look like on the ground for drone pilots and their teams? Give us some specifics.
Well, for complex operations, think of scenarios like BVLOS, beyond visual line of sight missions, maybe night flights, or even sophisticated drone swarm deployments. Formal fatigue risk management is definitively coming. We can anticipate future rules that will likely include specific duty time limits, mandatory minimum rest requirements between missions, and maybe even detailed crew logging for mental and physical readiness. It's about moving beyond simply "don't fly tired" to a systematic, predictive, and documented approach where fatigue is managed as a measurable critical risk, much like you'd manage adverse weather conditions or a potential mechanical failure. It's about building resilience into the human element of the system itself.
And you mentioned crew-wide fitness. Does that imply it's not just the pilot who needs to be absolutely fit to fly, but literally everyone involved in the operation, the whole team?
Precisely. The regulatory requirements are rapidly expanding beyond just the pilot to encompass payload operators, visual observers, and even remote crew coordinators. We're very likely to see shared crew fitness declarations becoming a standard pre-mission protocol. And this is a critical development because, as we'll soon see with some surprising facts, one person's fatigue or impairment can absolutely ripple through and compromise the entire mission's safety and success. It's a team effort.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. I've heard whispers about digital integration and even advanced wearable monitoring for fatigue. Are we actually talking about drones themselves telling us we need a break, not just warning us about the battery level?
Potentially, yes. We're definitely moving towards a future where technology can provide objective insights into human performance. Companies may increasingly adopt biometric wearables that can detect subtle signs of fatigue through metrics like, say, heart rate variability or changes in alertness patterns. Pre-flight applications might incorporate built-in IMSAFE questionnaires that intelligently adapt to your inputs, and future drone software itself could potentially flag fatigue risks based on log, time and mission, shift patterns, or even subtle flight performance anomalies. Imagine your drone, or maybe its operating system, giving you a polite but firm warning that you might need a break well before the battery runs low. It's really about leveraging technology to create a more objective, data-driven assessment of human operational readiness.
That's a truly fascinating future, isn't it? And is this kind of regulatory and technological evolution primarily a Canadian initiative, or is this a broader global trend we're seeing?
Oh, this is absolutely a global trend. Organizations like ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization, and other international bodies are actively moving towards universal fitness rules for drone pilots. This is especially crucial for things like cross-border operations, high-risk infrastructure inspections, and managing large commercial fleets. Canadian RPAS rules are increasingly mirroring the rigor and systematic approach of manned aviation's crew resource management, or CRM, principles and human performance standards. The overarching goal is global harmonization and a consistent, elevated level of safety and professionalism worldwide. It makes sense, really.
So with all these anticipated changes and the increasing emphasis on data, how will all this actually be enforced? Is it going to be primarily about mountains of paperwork or something more dynamic?
Enforcement will likely become increasingly sophisticated and data-driven. Future audits will very likely review detailed flight logs for things like excessive hours. They'll meticulously analyze incident history for patterns related to human error and closely examine pre-flight check records, whether those are manual paper logs or integrated digital entries. Operators who lack structured self-assessment tools or robust documented fatigue management protocols will probably be flagged as higher risk for non-compliance. And this connects directly to the bigger picture that we always emphasize on the deep dive. How knowledge is most valuable when it's not just accumulated, but truly understood and consistently applied. It's not just about ticking boxes for compliance. It's about building a demonstrably safe and proactively managed operation.
Okay, so with all this talk of rigorous legal requirements, advanced future tech, and comprehensive crew accountability, how does a pilot in the field actually assess themselves and their team before a mission? That's precisely where the IMSAFE framework comes into play, right? It sounds like the personal gold standard for readiness checks.
Absolutely. IMSAFE is a fundamental, non-negotiable personal checklist designed to assess pilot and crew fitness, and it's a core Transport Canada standard that every RPAS pilot really should know inside and out. It's a powerful, mnemonic, simple to remember, yet incredibly comprehensive in its scope. It's designed to be your quick pre-flight mirror check, so to speak.
Okay, so let's break down IMSAFE for our listeners. What does each crucial letter stand for, and why is it so important?
All right, it stands for I for illness. Any sickness, even just a common cold, can seriously impair your judgment and reaction time. M for medication. Both prescription and over-the-counter drugs can have side effects that impact your ability to fly safely. You need to know those. S for stress. Personal or professional pressures can divert your attention and significantly affect decision-making. A for alcohol. Pretty obvious, but absolutely critical. No amount of alcohol in your system is safe for flying. Zero tolerance. F for fatigue. Our main topic today, the physical and mental tiredness we've been discussing. And E for eating and emotion. Proper nutrition and maintaining a stable emotional state are crucial for sustained concentration during a flight.
It's such a clever mnemonic, isn't it? I'm safe to fly.
Yeah.
You essentially ask yourself this fundamental question before every single mission. And this is truly fascinating because the IMSAFE checklist didn't actually originate with drones at all. It came directly from military aviation, where fighter pilots needed a lightning-fast, reliable way to assess if they were truly combat ready, often in high-pressure, time-critical situations. And its effectiveness is so universally recognized that it's now routinely used by NASA before astronaut missions. Apparently, they even added a D for dehydration in some models, making it IMSAFE D, which just emphasizes how critical these seemingly basic human factors are across the absolute highest stakes fields imaginable. Wild.
It genuinely highlights the universality of human performance challenges, doesn't it? Regardless of the specific platform you're operating. Now let's dive a bit deeper into the crucial why behind each of these letters, because pilot fitness, as we discussed, isn't just a strong suggestion. It's a very clear and enforceable legal requirement under CARS.
Right. CARS 901.27 is crystal clear on this. You are legally bound not to operate an RPAS if you are fatigued or under any other impairment, and that includes the subtle, insidious effects of stress. This means that even if you feel perfectly fine, maybe you think you're managing, a degraded state of decision-making stemming from insufficient sleep, undue pressure, or an excessive mental load is inherently non-compliant. Full stop. Transport Canada possesses the authority to ground you, suspend your operator certificate, or levy significant fines if you fail to conduct a proper self-assessment and proceed with operations while impaired. The law focuses on objective performance and capability, not merely your subjective self-perception of how you feel.
Exactly. And when we talk about fatigue, it's not just one monolithic state of tiredness. There are distinct types, each with its own characteristics and implications for pilots. First, we have acute fatigue. This is short-term tiredness. It's what you feel after an unusually long, demanding day, or maybe following a single night of genuinely poor, interrupted sleep. It's usually resolved pretty quickly with one good night's rest. Then there's cumulative fatigue, which is far more insidious, I think. This type builds up relentlessly over several consecutive days of inadequate rest, or from a sustained period of high demanding workload without sufficient recovery time. This is the one where you might not even realize how profoundly tired you truly are until you start making uncharacteristic errors or your performance undeniably degrades. It creeps up on you. Finally, there's circadian fatigue. This is a profound disruption of your body's natural 24-hour clock, your biological rhythm. This occurs, for example, when you're required to fly at night or very early in the morning when your body's natural programming is essentially signaling that you should be asleep. You're fighting against your inherent biology.
Okay, so understanding these different types allows you to pinpoint the actual root cause of your tiredness and address it more effectively, rather than just vaguely saying, I'm tired. And stress, as we touched on earlier, isn't just about the massive, obvious pressures like responding to an emergency. What are some of the more common, everyday stress factors in typical RPAS operations that pilots should be acutely aware of? Things they might encounter regularly.
Oh, it could be a whole spectrum of things, many of which are just part of daily professional life, right? These include intense client pressure to deliver results under tight deadlines, sudden unpredictable weather changes that necessitate rapid decision-making, maybe unexpected equipment malfunctions that demand troubleshooting under pressure, a tight time crunch on a multi-mission day, poor or rushed pre-mission planning, and critically personal life issues that can bleed into your professional focus. You can't always leave it at the door. All of these, individually or more often cumulatively, contribute to your overall stress load and can significantly impact your cognitive function and decision-making capacity.
You're right. It's not just the big dramatic stresses. It's often the constant cumulative little pressures that gradually add up and erode your performance, often without you even noticing until certain warning signs begin to manifest themselves. What are some of those critical, tangible warning signs that a pilot or maybe even a watchful crew member should be actively looking for in themselves and, importantly, in each other?
These are essentially your body and brain issuing a clear distress signal, telling you it's absolutely time to pause and reassess. Key warning signs include things like zoning out or experiencing tunnel vision, that feeling where your awareness narrows significantly and you kind of lose sight of the bigger picture. You might find yourself snapping irritably at teammates, which is a sign of reduced emotional regulation. You could forget critical steps in a checklist or miss essential procedures, maybe take risky shortcuts you wouldn't normally even consider, or experience noticeably delayed reactions to unexpected events or new information coming in. These aren't just minor inconveniences. They are irrefutable indicators of impaired performance that directly compromise mission safety and could lead to serious incidents down the line.
So essentially, if you or someone on your team notices any of these signs, it's not really a suggestion. It's a clear directive. It's time to immediately reevaluate your fitness to fly. It's a direct signal that your in-safe check might be pointing definitively to a no-go situation, regardless of how urgent the mission might seem at that moment. Tag 3. Wait, that's wild. Facts about fatigue and stress.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this on another level now, because this isn't just about dry regulations and checklists, as absolutely vital as they are. The fascinating science and the compelling history behind fatigue and stress are absolutely packed with surprising, almost wild facts that make them incredibly memorable and really drive home just how fundamentally critical this topic is for anyone operating in a high-stakes environment. Here's where it gets really interesting, where the rubber meets the road between the science and the real-world consequences.
Yeah, these are truly the nuggets of knowledge that once you hear them, they really stick with you. They can reframe your entire understanding of just how serious this is.
Okay, first up, and this one is really sobering, fatigue kills faster than you think. Get this. Scientific studies consistently show that being awake for 17 hours straight affects your brain's performance and decision-making capacity in the same way as having a blood alcohol content, or BAC, of 0.05%. And if you manage to stay awake for a full 24 hours, your cognitive impairment is equivalent to a BAC of 0.10%, which, for context, is legally drunk in many places.
That's such a powerful and often shocking comparison, isn't it? You absolutely would never, ever consider flying a drone or driving a car, for that matter, while legally drunk. So the obvious question becomes, why would you fly while drowsy, knowing it has the same or even worse impairing effects on your brain? The incredibly effective way to internalize this is that simple phrase, tired, tipsy. It's a direct, undeniable link between two states of impairment.
Right. It completely reconfigures how you think about just pushing through or grinding it out. It's not toughness, it's impairment. And speaking of reconfiguring your mindset, you mentioned earlier that the IMSAFE checklist came from military aviation. That's not something you hear every day, is it? How did that happen?
Yeah, it's a fantastic piece of aviation history, actually. IMSAFE emerged from the intense demands placed on military pilots who needed a quick, reliable, and standardized way to assess their personal combat readiness, often under extreme pressure. Its inherent simplicity and comprehensive coverage made it universally adaptable, and its subsequent adoption by commercial flight training organizations, high-risk sports like skydiving, and as you said, even by NASA before astronaut missions, just highlights its fundamental cross-domain value. The fact that NASA, arguably the pinnacle of human performance optimization, felt the need to add that D for dehydration in some of its IMSAFE models just further emphasizes how thorough these personal airworthiness assessments need to be across all high-stakes activities. It covers the basics, which are critical.
Fascinating. Okay, our next wild fact puts a pretty brutal spotlight on our internal biology. Your brain has a clock, and it's brutal. Your circadian low, that is, when your body is naturally at its absolute lowest point of alertness and efficiency, typically hits between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m., almost without fail, even if you consider yourself a night owl. This is precisely why statistics consistently show that early morning flights, particularly pre-dawn ones, tend to cause significantly more errors and incidents than those conducted later in the day, even if the pilot feels adequately rested when they wake up.
It's your ancient internal alarm clock telling you in no uncertain terms that it's time to power down, regardless of your schedule or your intentions. It's really an evolutionary imperative. A really great way to cement this in your mind is your drone might be charged at dawn, but your brain probably isn't. You're simply fighting against millions of years of biological programming when you operate during that window.
That's a good one. I like that. And this next fact serves as a stark, absolutely indelible reminder of the real-world catastrophic consequences when human factors are ignored. The Challenger disaster had fatigue written all over it. The 1986 Space Shuttle explosion, a profound national tragedy, had a critical human factors component that's often overlooked in the technical discussions. Investigations revealed that NASA engineers, under immense pressure to meet the launch window, worked through the night on complex, critical decision-making processes regarding the O-rings. Tragically, due to their profound sleep deprivation and cumulative fatigue, they missed crucial warning signs that ultimately led to the disaster.
Yeah, this stands as one of the most powerful and heartbreaking lessons in human factors history. Combining high-stakes, irreversible decisions with severe sleep deprivation can lead to catastrophic blind spots. It's a sobering, undeniable example of how profoundly human performance can degrade under sustained pressure and fatigue, with absolutely devastating, irrecoverable results. It fundamentally reshaped how NASA approaches crew rest and decision-making protocols, a very hard lesson learned.
Absolutely devastating. Now, another genuinely surprising one, automation can make fatigue worse. You'd intuitively think that advanced automation, like, sophisticated flight modes or obstacle avoidance systems on a drone, would make things easier, less mentally taxing, right? Well, studies actually show that pilots often trust automation more when they're tired, even if that automation isn't functioning perfectly or isn't suited for the current conditions. Furthermore, people are demonstrably slower to notice and react to errors in automated systems when they're fatigued because they've subconsciously checked out mentally and are less actively monitoring what the system is doing.
That's the classic complacency trap, isn't it? Compounded by fatigue. When you're tired, your active attention and critical monitoring capabilities naturally diminish. Your brain subconsciously seeks to conserve energy by offloading cognitive tasks to the automated system, which, ironically, makes you less prepared for an unexpected anomaly or a system failure. The memory hook here is sharp and essential. When you're tired, your drone's brain can't save yours. You, the human pilot, still need to be the ultimate safety net and the final decision maker, always vigilant.
Right. Vigilance drops when fatigue sets in. Then there's the universal dependency, the thing many of us reach for. The caffeine trap. We all rely on it sometimes to kickstart our mornings or push through an afternoon slump, don't we? But here's the science. Caffeine typically takes a good 30-60 minutes to even begin to kick in, and its effects can linger for 6 hours or even longer, which can significantly impact your sleep later on. More critically, overuse or poor timing of caffeine can lead to those jittery hands, an uncomfortably fast heart rate, and those infamous rebound crashes later in the day. All of these side effects severely impair the precise, fine motor control that is absolutely essential for delicate drone operation.
Yeah, it's a classic double-edged sword. For instance, fighter pilots who rely on razor-sharp precision actually have very strict limits on how much caffeine they can consume before missions, precisely because of the documented tremor risk and its impact on fine motor skills. It highlights that even seemingly benign stimulants have significant physiological consequences in high-precision roles, like drone piloting. It's not just free energy.
Good point. And this one is truly fascinating from a psychological perspective. Stressed brains shrink their view. When you're operating under significant stress, your brain activates a primal fight-or-flight response, which often manifests physiologically and cognitively as tunnel vision. You physically and cognitively lose your peripheral awareness. This means you might completely miss crucial checklist items, fail to notice critical airspace changes happening around your operational area, or even misunderstand or ignore important crew communication.
It's fundamentally like trying to play a complex video game with the minimap completely turned off. You're operating effectively blind to essential context and critical peripheral information. It really narrows your focus, often intensely fixating on the perceived threat or the immediate task at hand, but at the costly expense of everything else happening around you. A great way to remember this is stress shrinks your sky. It limits your awareness.
Stress shrinks your sky. I like that too. And this next fact makes it incredibly clear where the legal lines are drawn. Legally speaking, stress isn't subjective. In Canadian aviation law, if stress or fatigue objectively impairs your performance, meaning it leads to a measurable degradation in your ability to operate safely, it absolutely does not matter if you feel fine or believe you're coping well. If that impairment demonstrably led to an error, an incident, or a violation, you are legally accountable, period. End of story.
It's not about your personal feeling or subjective perception at all. It's about the objective outcome and what you demonstrably miss or what you fail to do correctly in a safety-critical environment. The legal focus is squarely on your actual operational state and performance, not your personal assessment of how you feel you're doing. The memory hook here is crystal clear and legally significant. It's not how you feel, it's what you miss.
Okay, here's a real outlier, a rare genetic twist. Some people are genetically fatigue resistant, but it's rare. Believe it or not, roughly 1 in 1,000 people carry a specific genetic mutation, sometimes referred to as the DEC2 gene, that allows them to genuinely function effectively and feel rested on as little as 4 to 5 hours of sleep per night. Like, really function well.
Yeah, it's a truly fascinating biological anomaly, a sort of natural superpower, you could say. However, and this is critical, Transport Canada's regulations don't care about your genetic makeup. Everyone, regardless of their genes, is expected to meticulously manage fatigue professionally and adhere to the same stringent safety standards. And even these rare individuals, while needing less sleep overall, still demonstrate degraded performance after prolonged periods of wakefulness or significantly disrupted sleep cycles. So there are absolutely no shortcuts or genetic excuses for the vast majority of us.
Right, no get-out-of-jail-free card there. And finally, the big one, the overarching statistic that kind of pulls all this together. Fatigue is the #1 human factor in aviation accidents. Across the board, in commercial and military aviation worldwide, fatigue is cited more frequently in incident and accident reports than nearly every other human factor, more than adverse weather, more than mechanical failure, even more than basic poor judgment. It is consistently at the very top of the list.
This is an absolutely critical insight to internalize. Fatigue isn't some abstract concept or a soft skill to be casually dismissed. It is a hard, demonstrable safety hazard. Statistically, it's the most prevalent human factor contributing to aviation incidents. It profoundly underscores why all these regulations, rigorous training programs, and personal self-assessment tools like IMSAFE are so vitally important. It's often the silent killer in the cockpit or, in our specific context, at the drone controls, frequently going unrecognized until it's tragically too late.
Okay, so after absorbing all these scientific facts, the regulatory evolution, and these truly wild insights, what does all of this actually mean for you, the drone pilot operating out there, or for anyone managing a team of operators? These fundamental rules and surprising facts aren't just theoretical concepts. They come to life in very real-world scenarios that you or your crew will undoubtedly face sooner or later. It's not just about passing an exam, it's about consistently making the right, sometimes difficult, life-saving call every single time you prepare to launch. It's about protecting lives, safeguarding valuable equipment, and, crucially, defending your professional career and reputation.
That's precisely it. You, as the pilot in command, bear the ultimate legal responsibility for accurately assessing your personal fitness to fly before every single flight. This means that even under intense client pressure, maybe facing incredibly tight project deadlines, you must make the difficult but correct decision to cancel or delay a mission if you are in any way impaired by fatigue or stress. This isn't merely a safety recommendation, it is an explicit legal obligation rigorously outlined in CARS 901.27. It's black and white. And that leads us to another fundamental question that often gets overlooked in solo operations. What about the rest of your operational team?
That's a critical point. So your fitness to fly assessment and your legal obligation isn't limited just to your own state, but it extends to your entire crew, everyone involved.
Absolutely, unequivocally. Fitness applies universally to the entire operational crew. If your payload operator, PO, is clearly zoning out, or maybe your visual observer, VO, is exhibiting obvious signs of fatigue, stress, or distraction, you, as the pilot in command, are legally obligated to adjust the mission parameters or even cancel the mission altogether. CARS 901.27 comprehensively covers the operator's responsibility for ensuring crew fitness, not just the individual pilot's fitness. If your PO is too tired to correctly label critical thermal images, or your VO is so fatigued they miss spotting an unexpected obstruction entering the airspace, that directly compromises your mission's safety, its effectiveness, and its legal compliance. The entire chain of human performance must be strong and fit for duty.
Okay, this truly means you're responsible for the operational and performance fitness of every single person on your RPS team. It means you must think like a traditional pilot in command, the captain of a manned aircraft, not just an individual drone operator clicking buttons. You are the leader, the ultimate decision maker for that entire operation's safety. So let's look at some real-world scenarios. Let's put this knowledge to the test. For each one, visualize the situation, think about what's happening, make your decision, and lock it in. Okay, scenario 1, the all-nighter setup. You're booked for a critical sunrise infrastructure inspection at a remote, distant site. You decided to drive 5 hours through the night to get there, managing only about 3-4 hours of fragmented, poor-quality sleep in your truck at a rest stop. You then begin your pre-flight preparations at 5:30 a.m. Your client is already on site, having arrived earlier, and is clearly eager, maybe even pushing you to get started ASAP.
Okay, what's happening here is a really dangerous confluence of acute fatigue from the poor sleep, cumulative fatigue from the long drive, and likely lack of rest before that, and circadian fatigue because it's 5:30 a.m. All of this is severely compounded by significant environmental pressure from the client. While you might feel a burst of adrenaline and a sense of readiness in the moment, your brain is absolutely not operating at its full capacity. Your judgment is impaired, your reaction times are significantly slowed, and your cognitive processing is degraded. You're at a very, very high risk for making critical errors.
Right. So what's the correct compliant call here? And maybe touch on the potential consequences if you make the wrong one, if you decide to push through.
The correct call, unequivocally, is to firmly delay or potentially delegate the flight if another qualified pilot is available. You absolutely must document the reason in your flight log using the IMSA framework, specifically citing fatigue, F. Clearly and professionally inform the client that safety protocols absolutely prevent impaired operation and that proceeding would be non-compliant, unprofessional, and excessively risky. If you make the wrong call here, you risk an incident due to impaired judgment, maybe crashing the drone, missing the critical defect you were sent to find, damaging property, injuring people, or worse. Then you face the consequences: significant fines, license suspension, or even criminal charges if an accident occurs due to your known impaired state. The memory hook we discussed earlier is perfect here. If I wouldn't let a drunk guy fly at dawn, I shouldn't fly tired either. It's that direct, uncompromising comparison.
Yeah, that comparison truly puts it in stark perspective. Okay, let's try scenario 2. Skipped lunch and tunnel vision. You've successfully completed 2 demanding missions back-to-back in intense hot weather conditions. It's now 2 p.m., and you realize you haven't eaten anything substantial since 7 a.m. You subjectively feel, okay, maybe a bit drained, but fine, but you notice your payload PO snaps irritably at the visual observer VO over a minor detail. Later, during data review, you realize the PO forgot to turn on the crucial IR sensor for 2 full kilometers of what was supposed to be critical thermal footage.
Right. Here, we're witnessing the direct impact of low blood sugar, the hangry effect, and fatigue-induced mood shifts, which are creating palpable team stress and directly impacting mission output quality. Your PO's error forgetting to activate the sensor is a direct result of their physical impairment, lack of fuel, and irritability. And your own failure to immediately catch that crucial omission during the flight is likely due to your own developing tunnel vision, reduced overall awareness, or subtle fatigue setting in from the heat and long duration. You might feel fine, but the objective performance of your entire team, including your crucial oversight role, is clearly degraded. This could lead to incomplete data, requiring costly reflights, or in a critical inspection scenario, missing vital safety anomalies entirely.
So how do you effectively handle that situation right there in the moment, both for safety and for team cohesion? What's the immediate action?
You must immediately pause operations. Call for a mandatory break. Get everyone out of the heat, ensure everyone hydrates properly, and consume some energy, food, or snacks. It sounds incredibly simple, but addressing these basic physiological needs is absolutely critical for restoring cognitive function and team morale. You should also log the incident internally, the missed sensor activation, and the reason. Conduct a mid-mission IMSAFE check for the entire crew, maybe initiating a quick professional debrief about monitoring and cross-checking. The memory hook for this one is clear and practical. Mission before nutrition, omission, and confusion. It profoundly emphasizes that neglecting basic physical needs directly degrades cognitive function and significantly increases the likelihood of critical errors.
Okay, good one. Next up. Scenario 3. Client pressure and rushed launch. You're already 45 minutes behind your planned schedule for a complex mapping mission. The client on site is clearly agitated, pacing, pushing hard, maybe saying things like, "Can you just get the drone in the air already? We're paying for this time. We need these results now." Under this intense external pressure, you feel rushed and decide to skip part of your standard pre-flight checklist, and critically, you don't double-check the latest NOTAMs for the area. During the flight, you unknowingly enter a newly active NOTAM zone that's restricted airspace, and moments later, your phone rings. It's NAV Canada, wondering what you're doing there.
Yikes. This is a classic, extremely dangerous scenario where intense external stress directly leads to critical checklist failure and demonstrably poor decision-making, which in turn inevitably results in a serious regulatory breach. Client pressure, no matter how intense or how aggressively it's applied, never ever excuses noncompliance with aviation regulations. Never. Your legal obligation to maintain safety and adhere to airspace rules always outweighs any commercial pressure or client demand. The potential consequence here is immediate: a direct regulatory violation, potentially large fines, grounding of your operations, and serious damage to your professional reputation.
So what's the absolutely compliant and professional action to take in that high-pressure situation? How do you resist that push?
You must firmly, professionally postpone the launch until every single pre-flight check, including a thorough, up-to-the-minute review of the latest NOTAMs, which, remember, are notices to airmen, critical alerts about temporary airspace changes or hazards, is fully completed and verified. It's also vital to log the client pressure incident in your mission record. And, if appropriate and safe to do so after the situation is managed, calmly educate the client on the non-negotiable safety protocols that are in place to protect both their assets and your operation. They need to understand why you can't cut corners. The memory hook here is timeless aviation wisdom. If the pressure's high, check twice and fly once. Always prioritize safety and regulatory compliance over expediency or client impatience.
Check twice, fly once. Got it. Let's tackle scenario 4, the one last flight trap. You've successfully completed 3 full, demanding missions today. Maybe you even wrapped up a bit ahead of schedule. You're feeling good, the team's feeling good, the client is pleased and asks, "Everything went great. Can we just squeeze in one more quick flight? Just a short one over there?" You hesitate for a moment, you know you're tired, but then, swayed by the positive momentum and the client's enthusiasm, you agree. "Yeah, sure, we can do one more." During this one more flight, you begin to notice your own reaction times are sluggish, maybe your inputs are a little less precise, and you almost miss hitting a prominent transmission line that you would normally spot easily from a mile away. A near miss.
Ah, yes. This is a textbook case of end-of-day ego fatigue combined with dangerous complacency. You've had a successful run, which can subtly lead to an elevated risk tolerance and a fleeting feeling of invincibility or just wanting to please the happy client. Pilot overextension, pushing beyond your established human limits even when things are going well, is a statistically top contributor to incidents in all forms of aviation. You might genuinely believe you're invincible after a good day or just want to capitalize on the good vibe, but your inherent human physiological and cognitive limits remain firmly in place. They don't reset just because you had successful flights earlier. The consequence here could easily have been equipment damage, a serious near-miss report, or even losing that client's future business due to perceived recklessness or the actual incident.
And the correct professional call in that moment, when the temptation to just do one more is so strong, especially when the client is happy.
The correct call is to politely but firmly decline the additional request. Explain that safety protocols and managing crew fatigue require ending operations for the day, but you'd be happy to schedule it for the next day or another suitable time. Success absolutely does not reset human physiological limits. Your visibly degraded performance on that one more flight, the sluggish reactions, the near miss, is undeniable objective proof that you are already impaired, even if you felt a subjective high from the day's success. The memory hook here is profoundly simple, yet often ignored in the moment. One more is often one too many. Learn to recognize your limits, respect them, and stick to them professionally.
Okay, crucial lesson. Here's another challenging one. Scenario 5, emergency response. A local wildfire has just broken out, triggering an urgent late-night emergency call-out for immediate damage assessment and fire perimeter mapping. Critical information is needed now. You're the only advanced certified pilot available in the immediate vicinity with the right equipment. And it's a bit good, but you've already flown 3 demanding, complex missions earlier that day. It's now 10:30 p.m., well into your natural circadian low period.
Right, this is a tough one, ethically, operationally. In this highly critical situation, you're dealing with significant cumulative fatigue from your earlier missions, profoundly compounded by being deep within your circadian low. Your body's powerful biological imperative is screaming for you to be asleep. Now, while the extreme urgency of a genuine emergency might, in very rare and specific circumstances, justify operating outside normal limits. It only justifies flying if you are truly demonstrably fit to do so safely and effectively. Your personal fitness for duty assessment using IMSAFE rigorously remains absolutely paramount, even in the midst of a crisis. Impairment in an emergency can actually make the situation worse, not better. So do you fly? Given the immense pressure and the critical nature of the emergency, what's the definitive correct call here? If, after a rigorous, honest self-assessment using IMSAFE, you conclude that you are unfit to operate safely, perhaps you fail the F for fatigue or the S for stress, due to the pressure you must decline the mission, even in an emergency. Your impairment, if you were to proceed, could lead to more errors, potentially exacerbating the already dire situation, maybe creating new hazards for emergency responders on the ground, or even crashing vital equipment needed for the response. Your primary responsibility is always to operate safely, and that means being fit. If you decline, you should immediately attempt to escalate the request to another certified pilot or agency if one might be available, or clearly explain your critical limitations due to fitness. The memory hook here is vital and non-negotiable. Emergency doesn't override impairment. Your primary responsibility remains safety, even when lives are potentially on the line, because an impaired operator can cause more harm than good.
That's a tough call, but a necessary one. Let's look at a scenario related to environmental factors. Scenario 6, cold weather creep. It's a bitter winter day, maybe medics of 15 degrees C with some wind chill, and you're conducting a long-duration power line inspection. You've been outside for 3 hours straight, you're bundled up, but you're starting to shiver uncontrollably. You notice your fingers are getting stiff, making fine control difficult, and you're making tiny jerky corrections on the joysticks that aren't actually needed. Your VO keeps rubbing their ears and stamping their feet.
Okay, here you're clearly experiencing significant physical fatigue directly from prolonged exposure to extreme cold. This impacts not just your physical comfort, but your fine motor control and your cognitive sharpness. The shivering and the jerky corrections are clear physiological warning signs that your body is struggling. Your VO's actions signal their own degraded performance and discomfort. Cold relentlessly saps energy and concentration, making complex tasks like precise flight control or detailed observation far more difficult and error-prone. Consequences could be unstable flight, degraded data capture quality, frostbite, or even a crash due to loss of fine control at a critical moment.
What's the correct call here? You can't just stop shivering on command.
You absolutely must call a warm-up break immediately. Get everyone on the crew to a warm shelter, a vehicle, a building, whatever is available. Reassess everyone using IMSAFE, paying particular attention to eating emotion, cold severely affects mood and energy levels, and fatigue, physical exhaustion from the cold. Re-energize with hot drinks, snacks if possible. Only resume operations once dexterity, core temperature, and comfort are fully restored for the entire team. Don't rush back out. The memory hook could be cold hands, warm brains, safe drone. Prioritize keeping the operators functional.
Makes sense. And one more, focused on information overload. Scenario 7, virtual overload. You're remotely piloting a complex BVLOS drone from a ground control station. You're monitoring, say, 12 different telemetry feeds spread across 3 large screens. You're also managing concurrent data processing software running in the background, and a new urgent chat message pops up from your client demanding updates every 5 minutes. You suddenly realize with the jolt that you haven't actually looked at the main flight path map or the airspace display in over 10 minutes, and the drone is steadily approaching an unexpected temporary flight restriction, TFR area.
This is a prime example of cognitive overload and distraction fatigue, something becoming very common in high-tech, multi-screened remote operations. The constant influx of information and the demand for rapid task switching are completely saturating your mental capacity. This leads directly to a loss of situational awareness and neglect of critical monitoring tasks. You're essentially experiencing the digital equivalent of tunnel vision, focusing on the flashing chat message or one data feed while missing crucial external factors like the flight path and airspace. Consequences could be a critical airspace violation, resulting in FAA or TC action, loss of the aircraft if you hit something unexpected, or even a mid-air collision if other traffic is present.
How do you recover from this kind of virtual deluge safely? How do you manage that constant stream?
You need to implement a sterile cockpit rule, even for ground control stations, especially during critical phases of flight. This means silencing non-essential communications, closing unnecessary applications or windows, and actively prioritizing the most critical information streams. Maybe call out critical checks aloud, even if you're alone, to force your attention. If you're feeling overwhelmed, call for a brief pause in operations, hover the drone safely, or land it to fully reestablish situational awareness. Consider delegating monitoring tasks to another crew member if possible, or structuring the workflow to avoid simultaneous high-demand tasks. The memory hook here might be too many screens, too few brains focus. Manage the information flow proactively.
Okay, these scenarios truly drive home the point. This isn't just theoretical knowledge from a textbook. These are immediate, tangible situations that you or someone on your team could face literally tomorrow. And making the right, informed decision relies entirely on understanding these often invisible risks of fatigue and stress, and having the discipline to act on that understanding. So what really stands out to you after going through these real-world scenarios and those genuinely surprising, sometimes scary facts? For me, it's really how much deeper this entire topic goes than just ticking boxes on a simple checklist. It demands a fundamental shift in professional mindset, doesn't it?
Absolutely. What stands out to me the most is precisely how insidious fatigue and stress truly are, primarily because they are fundamentally cumulative and often remain completely invisible to the individual experiencing them. You may genuinely not feel impaired, you might even feel quite capable, maybe even sharp, but objectively, your performance could be significantly degraded, maybe down to only 60–70% of your optimal capacity. This significant disconnect between subjective feeling and objective performance is exactly why consistent pre-flight rituals, proactive crew debriefs, and meticulous operational logging are not just, good practices, but absolutely essential components of a professional operation. Transport Canada isn't simply looking for you to pass a written test on this stuff. They expect operators to cultivate truly professional habits for managing these complex human factors as part of their daily operational rhythm. And as a pro tip for every pilot out there listening, I strongly recommend keeping a simple daily pre-flight checklist or log specifically with IMSAFE notes, even for solo operations. It builds that crucial habit. It forces an objective self-assessment, and it provides invaluable documentation in case an incident ever occurs.
Yeah, that documentation could be critical. And beyond the immediate safety aspect, there is a very real and direct risk to your professional reputation and your regulatory compliance standing. It's not just about what happens in the air at that moment, right? There are longer-term consequences.
Precisely. The implications are far-reaching. If your drone suffers a crash or violates critical airspace, and it's later determined through investigation, perhaps by looking at flight logs, work schedules, or even witness statements, that you are likely tired or operating under undue pressure, the consequences can be severe. Significant fines, mandatory suspension of your pilot certificate or operator certificate, or even criminal charges, depending on the severity and nature of the incident. In any official investigation or subsequent legal proceeding, a distinct lack of documented self-assessment procedures or proactive fatigue risk mitigation protocols within your operation will likely be viewed as clear negligence. It won't be seen as just an unfortunate mishap. It could be construed as a serious breach of your professional duty and standard of care with lasting repercussions for your career and your company's reputation.
And this applies profoundly to teams too. We touched on it earlier, but I think it bears repeating because many ops involve crews. Fatigue is absolutely contagious in team operations. If you, as the lead pilot, are razor sharp and focused, but your payload operator is clearly distracted, maybe hungry, maybe overworked, they might mislabel critical thermal images, miss key objects in the visual feed, or miscommunicate vital hazard information back to you. And crucially, as the pilot in command, you remain legally liable for those critical errors made by your crew under your supervision.
Yes, that's exactly right. Your overall crew performance is an undeniable and integral part of your command responsibility. As the leader, you are directly accountable for ensuring every single member of your RPAS team is genuinely fit for duty before and during the operation. A stressed visual observer can tragically lead to missed airspace incursions or obstacles. A fatigued payload operator can result in incomplete or corrupted data capture, rendering the entire mission useless or even dangerously misleading. It's a delicate chain of human performance, and you, the pilot, are the ultimate guarantor of that chain's integrity. You must actively foster an environment, a safety culture, where crew members feel empowered and obligated to speak up if they, or perhaps a colleague, are feeling unfit or observing signs of impairment.
And this is another crucial distinction I think we should highlight. Stress and fatigue don't just affect if you can fly safely, they fundamentally affect how you fly, even if you manage to avoid a major accident. It's not just about preventing a catastrophic crash, it's about those subtle, insidious errors that could still have major, costly consequences down the line.
That's an incredibly important distinction. Fatigue and stress can cause you to unintentionally overcorrect your flight controls, leading to jerky movements or inefficient flight paths. They can cause you to skip crucial checklist steps without even realizing it till later. You might forget manual overrides you've practiced countless times, or simply lose track of vital parameters like time elapsed, battery levels, or complex airspace boundaries you're approaching. So even if you pass the initial MSAFE check and are technically legal to launch, you need to actively and consciously manage your energy levels, hydration, and sustained focus during the entire mission, especially for prolonged or multi-leg operations. It's an ongoing dynamic process of self-management and crew management, not merely a one-time pre-flight check you can forget about once airborne. This leads us to a really important conceptual difference that Transport Canada and aviation safety bodies worldwide rigorously emphasize: the difference between human error versus human factors. Human error is usually defined as a specific action or an omission, for example, forgetting to calibrate a sensor before a critical flight, or making an incorrect stick input. It's the what happened. But human factors are the underlying conditions or influences that directly lead to that error occurring in the first place, for instance. The pilot being under intense stress, feeling overwhelmed by excessive workload, suffering from cumulative fatigue, poor interface design, inadequate training. It's the why it happened. Transport Canada's modern approach views these human factors not as unavoidable mishaps or bad luck, but as largely preventable risks that can and should be mitigated with the right systems, robust training, and proactive operational awareness in place. It's about addressing the root cause of errors, not just blaming the individual for the symptom.
That makes perfect sense. So this isn't just about individual personal responsibility, although that's key. It's also about building robust, systematic operational procedures within your entire organization or your personal workflow.
Exactly. Transport Canada assumes and expects that professional operators will explicitly integrate comprehensive fatigue and stress awareness directly into their standard operating procedures, SOPs, their pre-flight checklists, and their regular team briefings or tailboard talks. For example, before a mission, a pre-mission briefing might include a direct, open, non-judgmental question to every crew member. Okay, team, quick check-in. Is everyone feeling 100% today, physically and mentally ready for this operation? Mission planners responsible for scheduling long-duration operations or very early morning launches should proactively build in mandatory rest cycles and sufficient buffer time, not just schedule back-to-back-to-back. Team leads and pilots in command should be rigorously trained to spot those subtle early warning signs of impairment like zoning out, an uncharacteristically irritable tone, or unusual quietness in their crew members, and feel empowered to act on them. If you're ever asked in an audit or interview how your operation robustly reduces human error risk, a comprehensive and professional answer must always include your specific fatigue and stress management protocols.
Right. And we also talked about how automation can, perhaps surprisingly, sometimes make fatigue worse. So relying solely on advanced automation, while helpful in reducing workload, won't ultimately save you from fatigue-related errors.
That's a very common and potentially dangerous misconception. While advanced flight automation can undeniably reduce the manual workload for a pilot, which is good, it can also dangerously increase complacency, particularly when a pilot is already tired. When something unexpected or genuinely goes wrong, like a sudden GPS signal loss, an unexpected system fault notification, or maybe an environmental change like sudden fog that the automation can't handle a fatigued pilot, will be demonstrably much slower to detect the problem, diagnose it correctly, and react appropriately, even if the automation is ostensibly engaged in handling routine flight. Your tired brain simply doesn't process critical, unexpected information as quickly or make swift, accurate decisions as sharply when it's impaired by fatigue, regardless of how intelligent or sophisticated your drone's onboard computer might be. The human operator is still the ultimate safety pilot and system manager.
So ultimately, for anyone operating drones professionally, or indeed for anyone working in any high-stakes environment where performance matters, it all boils down to cultivating what we can perhaps call an advanced pilot mindset. What does that truly entail in practice?
I think it's adopting the unwavering principle, the internal mantra. If I'm not 100% ready, mentally and physically, to effectively manage a surprise, an unexpected event, or a system failure right now, then I'm simply not ready to fly. That's the precise, proactive mindset Transport Canada wants to see in every advanced RPAS pilot, someone who is consistently alert, proactive, rigorously professional, and ultimately truly in command of not just the drone's movements, but also of themselves and their entire operational crew's fitness and performance. It's an ongoing, lifelong commitment to uncompromising safety and operational excellence that really begins and ends with honest self-awareness and professional discipline. #outro.
Wow. We've truly gone on an incredible deep dive today, haven't we? We've transformed the seemingly simple, everyday idea of just being tired into, I hope, a critical and profound understanding of drone safety, complex regulations, and the intricate science of human performance. We've seen, through compelling facts and stark real-world scenarios, how what you feel subjectively can be dramatically different from what is actually happening to your brain and body objectively, and the profound legal, operational, and safety implications of that often invisible disconnect.
Yeah, and if we connect this truly important information to the bigger picture, always remember that knowledge is most valuable, not when it's merely acquired or memorized for a test, but when it is deeply understood and consistently applied in your daily operations and decisions. What you've learned here today about fatigue and stress management isn't solely for drone pilots. It offers a profound and universal insight into human performance and critical decision-making that applies to literally any high-stakes environment you might encounter in your own life. From navigating a busy highway in traffic, to making critical business decisions under pressure, to responding effectively in a personal emergency, these principles of self-awareness, limitation recognition, and proactive management are universally applicable.
That's a great point. So the very next time you're facing a particularly demanding task, or maybe gearing up for a long, challenging day ahead, take just a moment to consider this. Is your brain truly running on full, optimal power, or are you unwittingly approaching that task with the cognitive equivalent of that tipsy mindset we talked about? What small, proactive step can you take right now? Maybe getting more sleep tonight, planning a break tomorrow, managing your stressors better to ensure you're truly, genuinely ready for whatever comes next, whether it's a critical drone flight, a big presentation at work, or just navigating a particularly challenging day safely and effectively. Thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive. We sincerely hope this exploration has given you a whole new, perhaps more critical perspective on a topic that truly impacts everyone every single day. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay sharp. That's a wrap on today's mission, Commander. See above, go beyond, get ahead. For more training, tools, and intel, head to skycommander.ca. If you learned something new, share it, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star debrief.